Elena had always loved the piano. Ever since she could remember, the sound of the keys under her fingers made her feel like she could fly. She wasn't from a wealthy family, and there were no grand pianos at home. In fact, the first piano she ever touched was old and slightly broken, with a key that stuck in the middle. But she didn't care. She would sit there for hours, practicing, imagining herself on a big stage with hundreds of people listening to her play. Even though she spent most of her time at the small music school in her town, her talent had not gone unnoticed. A teacher once told her that she had something rare, something that could make people stop and really listen. But despite the encouragement, Elena never felt completely confident. She often compared herself to other pianists she had seen in videos, who could perform fast, complex pieces without even looking at their hands. She sometimes wondered if she could ever reach that level. Then one day, a notice appeared about a music event in the city. It was a gathering of elite musicians, a chance to perform in front of influential people who could open doors to big opportunities. Elena felt a rush of excitement, but it was quickly followed by fear. She had never performed in front of such a large, formal audience before, and she had never played on a stage so grand. But something inside her said this was a chance she couldn't pass up. She applied quietly, not expecting much. She thought perhaps she could just watch and learn. But to her surprise, she received a response that she had been accepted. There was just one condition. She was told that she should play a simple melody, something easy and gentle, nothing too complicated. At first, Elena was confused. She had spent years mastering difficult pieces, so why ask her to play something simple? But then she realized the reason. Some of the organizers thought she couldn't handle a complex piece. Maybe they thought she wasn't skilled enough for the big stage. They probably wanted something safe, something that wouldn't stand out. Elena felt a mix of emotions. Part of her was angry. She wanted to show them what she could really do. Another part of her felt nervous. She didn't want to fail in front of all those people. But deep down, a quiet determination grew. If they wanted a simple melody, she would give them a simple melody, but it would be a melody that they would never forget. The night of the performance arrived, and Elena felt her heart beating faster than she ever had before. She stepped into the grand hall, filled with bright lights and polished floors. The room smelled faintly of flowers and wax polish. The audience was already seated, dressed in elegant clothes, chatting quietly, and sipping drinks. She could feel their eyes on her even before she reached the piano. The piano itself was enormous and shiny, far bigger than the old one she had practiced on. Its keys gleamed under the soft stage lights, and Elena felt a shiver of both fear and excitement. She walked slowly toward it, trying to calm her racing heart. She knew that the first few notes would be the most important. They had to capture attention without scaring anyone off. As she sat down, she took a deep breath. She looked out at the audience, noticing faces filled with curiosity. Some skeptical, some polite, some even a little dismissive. She remembered what they had said about keeping the melody simple. That was fine. She would play simply, yes, but she would pour everything she had into those notes. Her fingers rested lightly on the keys. She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining her old, worn piano at home, the place where she had learned every scale, every chord. That memory gave her courage. When she began to play, the hall was quiet. The simple melody flowed from her fingers like a gentle river, soft and calm. At first, some in the audience barely noticed, thinking it was just a polite performance. But Elena was already adding something extra, subtle changes that made the music feel alive. Each note carried her emotion, her years of practice, and the stories she wanted to tell. She could feel herself becoming part of the music becoming part of her. As she continued, the audience began to pay closer attention. The whispers and polite claps faded. People leaned forward, drawn in by the unexpected depth of what they were hearing. Even the organizers exchanged surprised looks. This wasn't just a simple melody. It was something beautiful, something that could touch hearts. Elena didn't stop. She let the music guide her, letting her feelings flow freely. Memories of late nights practicing alone, of small victories and tiny failures, all came alive in her performance. She could see some people closing their eyes, lost in the sound. Others whispered to each other, astonished by the skill and emotion that seemed to come effortlessly from her fingers. Elena had always dreamed of this moment, but it was even more magical than she had imagined. Time seemed to stretch and shrink at once. What felt like a few minutes might have been hours, but she didn't notice. She was fully present, fully herself. When she finally reached the last note, it hung in the air like a soft echo, and for a moment, the hall was completely silent. Elena opened her eyes and saw the audience frozen, staring, as if they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Their silence wasn't empty. It was full of awe, of surprise, and of admiration. Then the first clap came, quiet but confident. Slowly, it grew louder, until the entire audience was applauding, some standing to their feet. Elena's heart soared. She had done it. She had taken a simple melody and filled it with her soul, and the people who had doubted her were now cheering for her. She felt tears prick her eyes, not from fear or nervousness, but from pure joy and accomplishment. As the applause continued, Elena realized something important. Talent alone wasn't enough. Courage, determination, and a belief in oneself were just as powerful. She had turned a simple challenge into a moment that people would remember. And in that moment, she understood that this was only the beginning. The world was bigger than her small town, bigger than any doubts she had ever had, and she was ready to face it one note at a time. After her performance began, Elena could feel the audience's eyes on her, some curious, some skeptical. She had noticed their whispers and subtle smiles before she started, and for a moment, she wondered if she had made a mistake in coming here. But as she played, those doubts started to fade. The music carried her beyond her fear, and she let every note express what words never could. The hall was large and filled with people who were used to only the best performances, many of whom had traveled from different countries to hear talented musicians. They were sophisticated, polite, and difficult to impress. Some had already made up their minds that Elena, the young pianist, would not be able to live up to the grand stage. She could feel it in their posture, in the way a few people leaned back with crossed arms. It was intimidating, but instead of making her shrink back, it made her play with more focus. She remembered her teacher's advice, whispered so many years ago. Play not for others, but for yourself. If your heart is in it, they will feel it too. Elena closed her eyes for a moment and let the melody flow naturally. Her fingers moved gracefully over the keys, making the simple tune come alive. It started softly, gentle and calm, like a morning breeze through an open window. But there was something in the way she played, a subtle energy, that made even the critics look twice. Some people in the audience shifted in their seats, trying to catch every sound. A few leaned closer, tilting their heads as if trying to understand how a young woman could make such a simple melody feel so powerful. Elena noticed the change, not because she wanted to impress them, but because it reminded her of why she loved playing piano so much. Music had a way of touching hearts, and she was experiencing that magic firsthand. As she continued, Elena began to add small touches to the melody, subtle variations that made it richer and more emotional. Each note seemed to carry a story, not just for her, but for anyone listening. She imagined herself telling the story of her life through the keys, the nights she had practiced alone, the quiet moments of doubt, and the joy she felt when she finally mastered a difficult piece. Her fingers moved almost instinctively, guided by memory, feeling, and instinct. A few audience members, who had initially been skeptical, now had their eyes fixed on her hands. They could see the precision, the careful movements, and the confidence behind each touch. Some whispered to each other, surprised at her skill, while others simply listened, captivated by the emotion in the music. It was a different kind of performance, one that required attention and feeling rather than just speed or complexity. Elena's nerves had not disappeared completely. Every once in a while, a small wave of fear would pass through her, reminding her that the eyes of hundreds of people were on her. But she let those feelings transform into energy, letting her fingers play faster and with more confidence during the more complex passages of her interpretation. The simple melody they had asked her to play was now something alive, something that could make people sit up and take notice. The hall, which had once been filled with polite murmurs and quiet conversations, was now completely silent. Every person in the audience was listening, caught up in the music and the emotion it carried. Elena felt a connection she had never experienced before. It was as if each person was sharing the experience with her, feeling what she was feeling. She realized that the simple tune she had been asked to play had become a bridge, connecting her heart to the hearts of the listeners. She remembered her childhood, sitting at the old, broken piano at home. No one believed in her dreams back then, not really. There was little money, and people around her often said that she should focus on more practical things. But every evening, she would sneak into the corner of the living room where the piano sat, worn and faded, and play. Even then, she had known that music was a language stronger than words. And now, in this grand hall, that belief was being rewarded in a way she had never imagined. The subtle variations she added to the melody began to take the audience on a journey. Some faces softened, showing emotions that people usually kept hidden in public. A few people wiped small tears from their eyes, moved unexpectedly by the beauty of the performance. Others looked astonished, realizing that the young pianist could take a simple piece and transform it into something unforgettable. Elena played with a sense of freedom she had never felt before, almost forgetting where she was, who was watching, or what they expected from her. There was a sense of anticipation building in the hall. Each chord and arpeggio she played added layers of emotion that slowly drew the audience deeper into the music. Elena could sense the change in energy. The initial doubt was fading, replaced by curiosity, admiration, and even awe. People who had come expecting a polite performance were now engaged, leaning forward, paying attention to every movement of her fingers. Her hands glided over the keys, sometimes softly, sometimes with more force, always perfectly timed, perfectly controlled. She was no longer thinking about impressing anyone. She was completely immersed in the music. Every note mattered. Every pause was intentional. She let her heart guide her. And in that moment, she became more than a performer. She became a storyteller. The simple melody was telling a story of resilience, hope, and passion, and the audience could feel it. A few of the critics in the front row exchanged surprised glances. They had expected a safe, simple performance, nothing more. But now, they were witnessing something rare. A young woman who could command attention with emotion rather than theatrics, who could make the simplest piece feel profound. Elena noticed their eyes on her, but she did not let it distract her. Instead, she used it to fuel her performance, letting the music speak louder than words ever could. As she played, Elena began to notice small smiles spreading across the audience. People were whispering to each other, sharing their astonishment quietly, not wanting to interrupt the flow of music. Even the organizers, who had initially seemed indifferent, were now leaning forward, watching every note with genuine interest. Elena felt a thrill run through her, not from pride, but from the knowledge that she had touched people in a way that few performances could. She continued to weave the melody, taking it higher and lower, faster and slower, adding dynamics that made the music almost breathe. The audience responded unconsciously. Some tapped their fingers lightly on their knees, others leaned closer, fully absorbed. Elena realized that she had become the center of a living experience, and she felt a deep sense of connection to everyone in the hall. The energy in the room was no longer tense or skeptical. It was warm, open, and engaged. By now, Elena had completely lost track of time. What had started as a simple request to play a melody had grown into a performance that carried the weight of her dreams, her practice, and her heart. Each note told a story, each pause added meaning, and every variation she introduced brought a new layer of emotion. She was no longer just a young pianist playing for an audience. She was a musician sharing her soul. Even as the final notes approached, Elena felt a calm confidence wash over her. She knew that she had given everything she could, that every finger, every movement, every breath had been invested in the music. She played the last chord, holding it just long enough to let it resonate through the hall. The silence that followed was almost sacred, a moment when the audience collectively held its breath, amazed by what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, the applause began. At first, it was soft and hesitant, then louder and stronger. People were standing, clapping, cheering, and some even whistling. Elena's heart swelled with emotion. She had taken a simple melody and transformed it into a performance that left a mark on everyone present. In that moment, she understood the power of music. It could speak without words, touch hearts without force, and create connections that nothing else could. Elena smiled, feeling tears of joy and relief forming in her eyes. She had faced the skeptics, the doubts, and her own fears, and she had triumphed. The performance was not just about showing skill. It was about sharing herself and the music she loved with everyone in the room. As the applause continued, she knew that this was only the beginning of her journey. There were more stages, more audiences, and more melodies to share, and she was ready for them one note at a time. Elena could feel the energy in the room changing with each note she played. The simple melody had already captured the audience's attention, but now she wanted to take them further. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound guide her, and began to explore the depth hidden within the melody. She added small flourishes and unexpected harmonies, each one carefully measured to bring out emotion without overcomplicating the tune. Her hands moved fluidly, almost as if they had a life of their own, translating her heart's feelings into sound. Some in the audience leaned forward in their seats, their skepticism fading. They could sense something extraordinary was happening. A few whispered to each other, unable to believe that a simple melody could evoke such feelings. Elena had always believed that music had the power to speak to people's hearts in ways words could not, and now she was living proof. She wasn't playing for applause or recognition. She was playing because the music demanded it, because the story inside her wanted to be told. As she continued, Elena began to notice subtle changes in the audience's expressions. Faces that were once indifferent now showed surprise and curiosity. Some had soft smiles, others had eyes slightly widened, reflecting astonishment. She realized that people were not just hearing the notes, they were feeling them. Her performance was no longer just a recital. It was a shared experience, a moment where the boundaries between performer and audience disappeared. Everyone in the hall was part of the music in their own way. Elena's fingers moved faster, yet never rushed. She had mastered control and precision through years of practice. But now she added a layer of creativity and emotion that brought the melody to life. Each variation, each subtle shift in tempo, made the audience lean in closer, their attention fixed entirely on her. It was as if they had forgotten everything else, their conversations, their drinks, their status. In that room, there was only Elena and her piano, and the music connecting them all. She thought back to the small piano at home where she had learned her first scales. It had been old and imperfect, but it had been her world. Those quiet evenings, practicing alone while her family slept, had taught her discipline, patience, and the joy of discovering something beautiful from simple beginnings. Now, years later, that same passion was translating into a performance that touched hearts across a grand hall filled with strangers. It was more than she had ever dreamed. As the melody evolved, Elena experimented with dynamics, moving from soft, delicate passages to more powerful, commanding chords. She wanted the audience to feel the full spectrum of emotion she had poured into the music. Some listeners instinctively closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them. Others sat rigidly at first, only to relax as they realized the music was gentle yet powerful, technical yet heartfelt. The transformation of the simple tune into something rich and expressive was drawing them deeper and deeper into the experience. She noticed a few people in the front rows exchanging glances, surprised at what they were witnessing. They had expected a safe, simple performance, something polite and forgettable. But what they were seeing now was raw talent combined with passion, turning every note into a statement. Elena didn't play for recognition, yet the room seemed to vibrate with appreciation. Every subtle pause and every flowing movement told a story, and the audience couldn't help but be swept along. Elena's breathing matched the rhythm of the melody. She was fully immersed, fully present, and fully herself. Every chord and arpeggio was deliberate, filled with emotion, and every pause was calculated to let the music resonate in the hearts of those listening. The melody, once simple and unassuming, had grown into a living thing, expressing what she could not say in words. It was a moment where music became a bridge between her soul and the souls of everyone in the hall. She remembered her first teacher, who had encouraged her to feel the music rather than just play the notes. "The notes are just the beginning," the teacher had said. "It's what you put between them that matters." Elena had carried that advice with her all these years. Now, as she added subtle layers and emotional depth to the melody, she realized she was finally living that lesson. She was not just performing. She was telling a story, one that everyone in the room could feel. The audience was responding without realizing it. Their subtle movements, the way they leaned forward or closed their eyes, the quiet intake of breath, all showed that they were engaged in a way few performers ever experienced. Elena felt a thrill, but it wasn't about pride, it was about connection. She had found a way to share her passion and skill with people who had doubted her, and she was proving, note by note, that the music mattered more than their expectations. Elena then began to weave in small improvisations, letting her intuition guide her hands. Each addition brought a new color, a new emotion, into the melody. The room seemed to shift with the music, as if it had taken on a life of its own. People who had been whispering to each other earlier were now completely silent, their focus entirely on her and the piano. Elena felt a sense of freedom she had never felt before. The music was no longer just a series of notes. It was a conversation between her heart and theirs. She glanced briefly at the audience, noting their reactions. Some were visibly moved, some were smiling softly, and some had tears glistening in their eyes. Even the most critical members of the crowd could not hide their surprise. They had expected a safe performance, but now they were witnessing something extraordinary. Elena felt a deep sense of responsibility, wanting to honor the music and the attention they had given her. The simple melody began to evolve into a piece that was entirely her own. She added textures, gentle runs, and harmonies that lifted the music into a new dimension. Every change was intentional, every movement meaningful. Elena was not just playing the piano. She was sharing a part of herself that had been hidden for years. The hall seemed to hum with anticipation, every listener caught in the magic of the moment. As the music reached a gentle peak, Elena felt her emotions rising with it. She remembered every late-night practice, every challenge she had faced, every moment of doubt that she had overcome. Those experiences were now woven into the music, giving it life beyond the notes themselves. She played with a sense of urgency, yet calmness, a combination that made the melody feel alive, intimate, and powerful all at once. The audience was leaning forward now, fully absorbed. The whispers of skepticism had disappeared, replaced by admiration and wonder. Some people instinctively clasped their hands, others nodded subtly, acknowledging the skill and emotion she brought to the piano. Elena felt a quiet satisfaction, not from recognition, but from the knowledge that she had touched the hearts of everyone listening. The final section of her performance approached, and Elena slowed the tempo, letting each note linger just a little longer than expected. The audience felt the shift, sensing the emotion in every key. She played with grace and intention, guiding them through a journey that began simply but had grown into something unforgettable. Her fingers moved with confidence, knowing exactly how to end the piece in a way that would resonate deeply. When the last note rang out, the hall was completely silent for a heartbeat. Then, slowly, applause began to rise, starting softly but building quickly into a roar. Elena looked up, seeing people on their feet, clapping, cheering, and even whistling. She felt tears of joy form in her eyes. She had taken a simple melody and transformed it into something that had moved every person in the room. Elena realized in that moment that music was more than notes and rhythm. It was a language of emotion, a bridge between hearts, a way to connect people beyond words. She had shared a part of herself that could not have been expressed otherwise, and the audience had responded in kind. The performance had started as a challenge, a request for something simple, but it had grown into a demonstration of courage, talent, and passion. As the applause continued, Elena smiled, her heart full. She knew that this was only the beginning. There were more stages, more melodies, and more opportunities to share her music with the world. But in that moment, surrounded by the awe and appreciation of the audience, she understood that she had done something remarkable. She had turned a simple melody into a memory that would linger in the hearts of everyone who had heard it, and she had discovered the true power of music and of herself. Elena could feel the room shifting around her as the music flowed from the piano. What had started as a simple melody was now a complex, emotional journey, each note carrying a piece of her soul. She didn't notice the passage of time. There was only the music and the way it seemed to wrap around the audience. Every eye was on her, every ear attuned to the sound, and she could feel the energy of the room responding to every movement of her fingers. The audience was no longer just listening, they were experiencing the music. Some leaned forward, holding their breath during delicate passages. Others had closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them like a wave. Even those who had been skeptical, who had whispered quietly to each other earlier, were now fully engaged, caught in the beauty and power of her performance. Elena could see the awe in their faces, the surprise, the emotions that the melody was stirring. She felt a quiet thrill, not from pride, but from the connection she was creating. Elena began to add layers to the melody, subtle harmonies and variations that enhanced its depth. Each chord she played seemed to speak directly to the hearts of the listeners. She thought about the hours she had spent practicing, the small victories and struggles that had brought her here. Every experience had shaped her, and now it all came together in this moment. She played with both technical skill and emotional honesty, letting the music tell a story that words could never capture. The melody rose and fell, soft and tender at times, powerful and commanding at others. Elena's hands moved with grace and confidence, each note deliberate yet filled with feeling. The audience was silent, completely absorbed, yet Elena felt their presence as a shared heartbeat, a rhythm that matched her own. She could sense them leaning in, waiting for what would come next, and she responded with music that was alive, responsive, and full of emotion. She remembered the countless nights she had spent alone with her piano, practicing while the world slept. No one had been there to cheer her on, yet she had kept going, driven by a love for the music that never faded. Those quiet nights had taught her patience, resilience, and the joy of discovering beauty in every note. Now, in this grand hall, that same love was reaching hundreds of people at once. Elena realized that her dedication and persistence had prepared her for this very moment, and she felt a surge of gratitude for every challenge she had faced. As the music continued to evolve, Elena introduced small improvisations, letting her intuition guide her hands. Each variation added richness and texture to the melody, taking it to heights that no one had expected. The audience could feel the emotion in every note, the story behind each phrase. Some were visibly moved, their eyes glistening with tears. Others were silent, mesmerized by the skill and passion that Elena poured into her performance. It was more than a recital. It was a shared experience that brought everyone in the hall together. The subtle dynamics she introduced made the music feel alive. Soft passages drew the audience in, creating moments of intimacy and reflection. Louder, more forceful chords conveyed strength and emotion, making hearts race and stirring deep feelings. Elena played with a sense of freedom, trusting her instincts and letting the music guide her. She had learned that the best performances were not about perfection, but about authenticity and the courage to express oneself fully. Some members of the audience shifted in their seats, unable to contain their admiration. They had expected a simple, polite performance, something safe and predictable. But what they were witnessing was extraordinary. Elena had taken a simple melody and transformed it into an emotional journey that touched everyone present. Even the most critical listeners were now captivated, leaning forward to catch every subtle nuance and harmonic detail. Elena felt a deep sense of fulfillment as she played. The music was no longer just notes on a page. It was a living expression of her heart, her experiences, and her dreams. She felt a connection with every person in the room, a silent understanding that transcended words. The audience was part of the music, and the music was part of them. It was a shared experience, intimate and profound, that would be remembered long after the performance ended. She thought about her early days of practice, the small, worn piano at home, and the quiet determination that had driven her to keep playing despite obstacles. Those moments had shaped her into the musician she was today. Every struggle, every late night, every piece she had learned contributed to the depth and emotion of her performance. Now, all of that effort was paying off in a way she had never imagined. The audience was reacting in subtle yet unmistakable ways. Some were smiling softly, moved by the beauty of the music. Others had tears in their eyes, quietly touched by the emotion that Elena was conveying. Even the organizers, who had once been skeptical, were now leaning forward, captivated by the performance. Elena felt a sense of quiet triumph, not from proving herself to others, but from sharing something deeply personal and meaningful. As she played, Elena felt the music taking on a life of its own. She allowed herself to be carried by the melody, letting her fingers explore new possibilities and express emotions she had never fully articulated. The audience responded instinctively, their attention unwavering, their hearts open. It was a rare and magical moment, where the connection between performer and listener was complete and undeniable. She introduced gentle pauses, allowing certain notes to resonate and linger, creating a sense of anticipation and depth. The audience leaned in, sensing the emotion in each pause, feeling the story behind every phrase. Elena played with intention and sensitivity, aware of the impact her music was having. She had transformed a simple melody into a journey that evoked wonder, awe, and deep emotional resonance. The room seemed to hold its breath as Elena continued, each note building on the last, creating a tapestry of sound that enveloped the audience. She could feel the intensity of their attention, the subtle changes in posture and expression as they absorbed the music. Some had their eyes closed, fully immersed, while others watched her hands with fascination and admiration. Elena felt a profound sense of connection, knowing that the music was touching each listener in a unique and meaningful way. Her hands moved effortlessly over the keys, guided by years of practice and a deep understanding of the music. Each chord, each run, each pause was deliberate, filled with intention and feeling. She had learned that the true power of music lay not in complexity, but in the ability to convey emotion and connect with others. That understanding was now being realized in every note she played. The simple melody had grown into something extraordinary, a performance that was both technically impressive and emotionally compelling. The audience was fully engaged, their attention captured, their hearts open. Elena felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had shared something meaningful and profound. She played not for recognition but for the music itself, and for the connection it created. As the performance approached its climax, Elena felt a surge of emotion. She allowed the melody to reach its fullest expression, combining power, grace, and emotion in every note. The audience responded instinctively, their excitement and admiration growing with each passing moment. Elena could feel the room vibrating with energy, a collective response to the music she had created. It was a rare and magical experience, one that would remain in the memories of everyone present. Finally, she guided the melody to a gentle, lingering conclusion. The last notes resonated through the hall, fading slowly into silence. For a brief moment, there was no sound, only the lingering emotional impact of the performance. Elena opened her eyes, taking in the audience's reaction. They were silent, stunned, and completely captivated. Then, slowly, applause began to build, soft at first, then growing louder and louder. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, and some even whistling, completely moved by what they had witnessed. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, not from fear or nervousness, but from pure joy and fulfillment. She had taken a simple melody and transformed it into a performance that left a lasting impression on everyone present. She realized that music had the power to touch hearts, to create connections, and to tell stories that words could never express. In that moment, she understood the true magic of her art and the impact it could have on those who listened. Elena's hands moved over the keys with a confidence and grace that seemed effortless, but each note carried the weight of years of practice, discipline, and emotion. She felt completely immersed in the music, her mind and heart connected through the piano. The simple melody she had been asked to play was no longer simple. It had become a living expression of her passion, her struggles, and her triumphs. Each note told a story, and the audience was captivated by the unfolding narrative. The energy in the hall was palpable. Every listener was leaning forward, holding their breath, and letting the music reach inside them. Some had their eyes closed, feeling each chord and harmony resonate within their hearts. Others were fixated on her fingers, watching in awe as they danced across the keys. Elena noticed the subtle changes in their expressions, the softening of faces, the quiet gasps, the occasional tears glistening in eyes. She felt the impact of her music in a way she had never experienced before. As the melody grew in complexity, Elena allowed herself to improvise, adding flourishes that elevated the tune without losing its essence. She experimented with tempo, dynamics, and emotion, letting intuition guide her every movement. Each chord progression was deliberate, yet instinctive, and the audience responded instinctively. They could feel the story she was telling without words, sensing the depth of feeling and the dedication that had brought her to this moment. Her thoughts briefly wandered to the small piano at home, the place where it all began. She remembered the quiet nights, the struggles with difficult pieces, and the moments of frustration and triumph. Those memories fueled her performance, giving her the strength to pour her entire being into the music. She realized that every challenge she had faced had prepared her for this moment, and she played with a sense of purpose and clarity that radiated from her fingertips. The audience was now fully engaged, completely absorbed in the performance. Some were whispering softly to each other, expressing disbelief at what they were witnessing. Others remained silent, letting the music speak directly to their emotions. Elena felt a connection with each listener, as if the music had created an invisible thread linking her heart to theirs. It was a rare and magical experience, one that went beyond technical skill or virtuosity. It was pure, unfiltered emotion translated into sound. She added subtle layers of harmony and counterpoint, making the simple melody rich and textured. Each note seemed to glow, carrying its own emotion, yet blending seamlessly with the others. Elena's fingers moved with a combination of precision and freedom, as if the music itself guided them. She felt a sense of liberation, a joy in expressing herself fully without fear or hesitation. The hall was filled with a sense of anticipation, each listener waiting for the next phrase, the next crescendo, the next revelation. The melody began to swell, building towards a powerful climax. Elena's hands flew over the keys with controlled energy, creating waves of sound that filled every corner of the hall. The audience felt the intensity, their hearts racing in time with the music. Some closed their eyes, lost in the beauty and emotion of the performance. Others sat upright, eyes wide, completely mesmerized. Elena could feel the collective heartbeat of the room, and it pushed her to give even more, to reach even higher, to make the music unforgettable. She reflected on the advice her first teacher had given her years ago. Play with your heart, and the audience will feel it. Play with fear, and they will feel that too. Elena had embraced this lesson, letting go of doubt and fear, and playing with absolute honesty. She allowed her emotions to flow freely, channeling every memory, every dream, every moment of determination into the music. The audience was no longer passive. They were participants in a shared journey, swept along by the melody and the emotion it carried. Elena's improvisations grew bolder, yet remained tasteful and harmonious. She took the audience through a roller coaster of feelings, soft, reflective moments followed by powerful, passionate surges. Each section of the performance was carefully crafted to maximize emotional impact while maintaining the integrity of the simple melody. The audience could feel her joy, her vulnerability, and her strength. They were completely enraptured, hanging on every note, every pause, every subtle shift in dynamics. Some audience members were visibly moved, wiping tears from their eyes or holding their hands to their chests. Others sat in stunned silence, unable to comprehend how a simple melody could evoke such deep emotions. Elena noticed the astonishment in their eyes, the way their attention was rapt, their skepticism replaced by admiration. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had achieved what she had hoped for. Not to impress, but to touch hearts. The room seemed to hold its breath as Elena moved towards the final passages of the piece. She played with a delicate balance of power and tenderness, allowing the music to rise and fall naturally. The audience responded intuitively, following her lead, caught in the ebb and flow of the melody. Elena felt a sense of unity with them, a shared emotional experience that transcended words. She had created something rare, something unforgettable, something that would linger in their memories long after the last note faded. The climax approached, and Elena's hands moved with a combination of strength, grace, and precision. The music reached its peak, full of emotion, complexity, and beauty. The audience was completely absorbed, their eyes fixed on her, their ears attuned to every subtle nuance. Some were leaning forward, some were holding their breath, and some had tears streaming down their faces. The performance had become more than a recital. It was an emotional journey, a shared experience that left everyone present transformed. As the final chord resonated through the hall, Elena allowed it to linger, giving it time to fill the space and reach the hearts of the listeners. There was a moment of silence, a collective pause as the audience absorbed the full impact of what they had just experienced. Then, slowly, the first clap broke the silence. It was followed by another, and another, until the entire hall erupted into applause. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, and whistling, completely moved by the performance they had just witnessed. Elena felt tears of joy and relief streaming down her face. She had taken a simple melody and transformed it into something extraordinary, something that touched every person in the room. She realized that the power of music lay not in complexity or fame, but in honesty, passion, and the courage to share one's heart. The audience's reaction was more than she had ever hoped for, a testament to the connection that music could create. She glanced at the audience, seeing their astonished, joyful, and emotional faces. The critics, the organizers, and the listeners alike were all united in admiration and awe. Elena understood that she had created a moment that would be remembered, a performance that transcended the ordinary and reached something deeper. She had faced skepticism and doubt, but she had prevailed, not through bravado or showmanship, but through authenticity and dedication. As the applause continued, Elena allowed herself a moment to breathe, to feel the impact of what she had just accomplished. She knew that this was only the beginning of her journey, that there were more stages, more audiences, and more music to share. But in that moment, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had connected with hundreds of people in a way that words could never achieve, and she had discovered the true magic of music, and of herself. The last note lingered in the air like a gentle whisper, fading slowly as the hall remained silent for a heartbeat. Elena's fingers rested lightly on the keys, and for a moment, she simply breathed, taking in the magnitude of what had just happened. The audience, who had been completely captivated by her performance, slowly began to stir, as if waking from a shared dream. Then, like a wave breaking on the shore, the applause erupted. It began softly, polite and careful, but quickly swelled into a thunderous ovation that filled every corner of the grand hall. Elena felt her heart race, a mixture of exhilaration, relief, and overwhelming joy. She had transformed a simple melody into something extraordinary, something that resonated deeply with everyone present. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, and some were wiping tears from their eyes. It was not just admiration for her skill, but appreciation for the emotion, honesty, and passion she had poured into the music. The connection she had created was real and powerful. She looked out at the crowd, taking in the variety of reactions. There were faces filled with awe, smiles that spoke of wonder, and eyes glistening with emotion. Some people whispered to one another, still in disbelief that a performance so simple at first glance could carry such depth and power. Elena realized that the music had touched them in a way that went beyond entertainment. It had moved their hearts. In that moment, she understood the true meaning of performing. It was not about applause, recognition, or fame. It was about reaching people, sharing a part of oneself, and creating something that mattered. Elena's thoughts wandered back to the small piano she had learned on as a child, old and imperfect but full of possibility. She remembered the nights spent practicing alone, the challenges she had overcome, and the small victories that had shaped her as a musician. Every tear shed, every frustrated sigh, every moment of doubt had led her to this night. And now, all those hours of dedication were reflected in the audience's response, their appreciation a mirror of her effort and perseverance. She could see the organizers and critics exchanging glances, their earlier skepticism replaced by admiration. Some had expected a safe, simple performance, and what they witnessed had far exceeded their expectations. Elena did not play for validation, but the acknowledgement from those who had doubted her was a quiet satisfaction, a recognition that her talent and passion could not be ignored. She realized that being underestimated had, in its own way, made this moment even more meaningful. The applause continued, filling the hall with energy and warmth. Elena took a deep breath, feeling both humbled and proud. She allowed herself to smile, letting the audience's enthusiasm wash over her. She had shared her music fully, and in return, the room had shared something equally profound, a collective experience of beauty, emotion, and connection. It was rare, it was fleeting, and it was unforgettable. As the clapping slowly subsided, a few people approached the stage, offering heartfelt congratulations. Elena nodded and smiled, graciously accepting their praise without letting it overwhelm her. She knew that the true reward was not in the compliments, but in the shared experience, the unspoken understanding that had passed between her and the audience. Each person who had listened had carried a piece of the music with them, and she felt honored to have been the one to guide them on that journey. She stepped back from the piano, her fingers still tingling from the intensity of the performance. The grand hall seemed quieter now, but it was not empty. The echo of her music lingered, and she could sense the lingering emotion in the faces of the audience. Some were still smiling softly, others quietly reflecting on the impact of the performance. Elena understood that music had the power to reach people in ways words never could, and she felt a profound gratitude for the opportunity to share that gift. Her mind wandered to the dreams she had held as a child, dreams that had seemed distant and unreachable. The small piano at home, the late nights of practice, the moments of doubt and persistence, they all had led her to this stage, this performance, and this moment of connection. Elena realized that every effort, every struggle, and every act of dedication had been worth it. She had taken a simple challenge and transformed it into something extraordinary, something that would be remembered by all who had witnessed it. As she looked at the audience one last time, Elena felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. The applause had been loud and enthusiastic, but what mattered most was the subtle, quiet connection she had made with each person. Music had bridged the gap between performer and listener, creating an unspoken bond that transcended words and gestures. Elena knew that this was the essence of what she had always loved about playing the piano, the ability to communicate, to touch hearts, and to create moments of shared beauty. The hall gradually began to empty, but the energy of the performance lingered. Elena stayed for a few moments, reflecting on the experience and letting the emotions settle. She thought about the skeptics, the doubts, and the fears that had accompanied her here, and she felt a quiet sense of triumph. She had faced challenges, both external and internal, and had emerged with a performance that was honest, moving, and unforgettable. It was a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and belief in oneself. Elena packed her sheet music carefully, her hands still carrying the memory of the performance. She thought about the future, about the stages yet to come, the audiences she had yet to touch, and the music she had yet to play. The standing ovation, the cheers, the heartfelt congratulations. They were not the goal, but a reflection of the journey she had taken. She understood that each performance was an opportunity, a chance to connect, to share, and to inspire. And she was ready to embrace it, one note at a time. As she left the stage, Elena felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had discovered something profound about herself through this performance. The courage to trust her abilities, the strength to face doubt, and the joy of sharing her passion with others. The experience had not only impacted the audience, but had also deepened her own understanding of music, connection, and expression. She knew that this night would remain in her memory forever, a benchmark of what was possible when talent, dedication, and heart came together. Walking through the quiet corridors of the hall, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The simple piano at home, the countless hours of practice, the moments of self-doubt, and the encouragement of teachers and mentors had all shaped her. She realized that the true reward was not applause or recognition, but the ability to touch lives through music. The experience had shown her that even a simple melody, played with honesty and passion, could create a powerful and lasting impact. Elena stepped outside into the cool night air, feeling a sense of calm and satisfaction. The city lights glimmered around her, and she felt the possibilities that lay ahead. She knew that there would be more challenges, more performances, and more opportunities to grow. But she also knew that she had proven to herself that she could rise to any occasion, that her music could move people, and that her dedication and passion were enough to create something truly remarkable. As she walked home, Elena allowed herself to smile, thinking about the audience, the music, and the journey that had led her here. She felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond words, a quiet confidence in her abilities, and a renewed excitement for the future. She had turned a simple challenge into a triumph, a simple melody into an unforgettable experience, and she had discovered the true power of music and the human connection it could create. And in that moment, Elena knew that this was just the beginning of a journey that would continue to inspire, to move, and to touch hearts, one note at a time.